Kamil Rextin is here. So, hey, dude, join me on the stage if you're around and can hear me. Let's have a little seance if you're here.
All right. Can you guys see me?
All right. Yes. All right. This is live from WeWork.
Yeah.
All right. I recognize that layout. I've been there myself.
It's
Okay.
one of the few
Beautiful.
places
Beautiful.
where I can get peace and quiet from the kids.
Man, you really know. I'm hiding in this cave here. Like, I don't work from home because kids and wife and the fridge and two
Yeah.
cats.
TV. Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Nice.
All those things. Yeah. All right. So a bunch of companies are making a bunch of mistakes when it comes to demand gen and RevOps, and you're going to tell us all about it. So beautiful. Share
Yeah.
your screen with us. I'm going to hop off the stage, and I'll see you in about 20 minutes.
All right. All good? Can you guys see me okay? Can you see my screen? I assume yes. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm Kamil. I'll be talking about 5 mistakes B2B companies make with Demand Gen and RevOps. Actually, there's more than 5, but we'll see how that goes. Who am I? I work in house and growth and Demand Gen and RevOps roles for around 12 plus years. I'm currently the GM, which is general manager and founder at 42 Agency, where we help Demand Gen and RevOps companies scale. We work with brands like Profitwell, Guru, and many, many more. Now, before we go into what is all the mistakes people make, I want to understand first what demand gen actually means, and then there's if you pay attention to social media, there's a lot of discussion about demand gen versus lead gen and all that stuff. So I just want to this is my definition. Demand gen is not just paid media. It's not just direct response. It's not just demos and acquisition. To me, demand gen just means that it is the journey to revenue. So it might be taking somebody who did not know about your product, did not know they have the problem, to taking them all the way down to revenue and an opportunity. And the job isn't done until the gong is rung, because in a lot of sales team, you ring the gong when you close the deal. And just a nuance on that, because there's a bit of a discussion around demand gen versus growth. The way I like to see it, the way I define it is demand gen is a more of a mid-market enterprise function in comparison to something like the growth function, which is more of an SMB. So the way I see it, where demand gen, if you're selling to mid-market enterprise, you're connecting with your sales teams. You're working with the sales team, and then you're working that, and you don't have that much influence on the product side. So because the funnel is not very self-serve, bottoms up, PLG, whatever you call it. With the growth, because you're selling to more of an SMB, your cost per revenue, your overhead costs need to be smaller. So you're pushing more people into the self-service funnel, and then growth is more, you are responsible for product onboarding as well as acquisition, as well as upgrades and all that stuff. But in the end, I just want to put a disclaimer that as marketers, we love to label things and talk about different things in different contexts, and we love to call PLG, freemium, demand gen, growth marketing. At the end, it's all about good marketing and understanding your customers' problems and solving for them. Now, top 5 mistakes company makes with demand gen. Okay, let me dig into it. The top one that we've seen people make is ignoring product channel fit. So understanding how people buy and research your product is very relevant to how you want to sell them and which channels you want to be on. For example, if you're selling enterprise ERP software, it's very unlikely that people are on Reddit reading about enterprise ERP software. Your buyers are more CIOs and stuff, and they might be reading Gartner reports, industry publications. Whereas if you're selling to more SMB people, they might be on Google, might be on Facebook, might be on LinkedIn, might be in associations and some other niche industry publications where they are more reading about that. So I think when we've seen people say, oh, X channel doesn't work for us, it might be because X channel is just not where your people hang out. Now, there are certain baseline channels. Like a great example is we had a customer, this was 3-4 years ago, they were selling to airlines. Their total addressable market was 500 airlines. Now, the airlines were not on Google searching for how do I improve my XYZ ancillary revenue and upgrades, but they were thinking about that, and they were talking about that in their earning reports. They were talking about that in their conferences. And our strategy was to go more outbound to the airlines and sell to the CIOs. We had some ABM, we had some Offline, we had some billboards, we had some events, but we were not buying keywords on Google because literally there was nobody searching on Google for that problem. But at the same time, if I'm selling a productivity software to individuals or small companies, then I might be on Google looking for productivity software for my agency, and that's a good channel for me to be on. Mistake two, if I had a penny for every time people say Facebook ads don't work for B2B, I would be a rich person by now and I would be retired. The problem is that whenever we see people say Facebook or XYZ doesn't work for B2B, they're not optimizing the channel or the platform for the goal they have in mind. So, for example, we've seen a lot of folks run Facebook ads for B2B, enterprise, whatever, and they'll be running brand awareness ads. And that is a wrong way to go about it. So you want to be optimizing for the outcomes you want. So if you're running BOFU ads, optimize for conversion versus traffic, because if you optimize for traffic, Facebook's going to give you more traffic, but it's not going to convert as well. If you are running top of funnel ads for awareness, maybe use video views or landing page views, not traffic, because landing page views generates higher quality traffic. And then you can remarket to them and you can generate more awareness. And then the awareness piece goes into my other pieces, like, you're not optimizing for business outcomes. So if you have ever heard that, oh, the quality of the data doesn't match what's in the CRM, most of the ad platforms now leverage offline conversion tracking, which means that they get data from your CRM, your backend database, your data warehouse, your data lake, your whatever, and you can send those events as offline conversions. So then the ad platform knows that these conversions are worth more than somebody just simply filling out a form or signing up for a trial. But you can actually you can train the algorithm on the ad platform side to go much, much deeper on optimizing for value versus just top of funnel conversions. And this ultimately helps you get better results because the ad platform's algorithms are much, much, much more sophisticated than us. So we want to give it enough data and the right kind of data. But if you give the ad platforms junk data, you're just going to get junk out. But if you give the ad platforms quality data on what matters to your business, it's going to help you generate more quality data on what generates in your business. Mistake 4, not considering the holistic experience. So most companies will invest heavily in the campaigns, technical setup and plumbing, but they'll ignore the quality of creatives, the customer experience. The average person is exposed to like more than 10,000 ads a day. So you have to stand out with the creative and also the post-click experience. So understand that, if you're running ads on AdWords and you send them to a homepage, the homepage is not optimized for converting that kind of traffic. The homepage was somebody who might be already familiar with your brand, but if you're hitting a cold audience who's never heard of your brand, the homepage is probably not the best place to send them, because they're only going to check it out for a few seconds and they're like, I don't understand what this does, I'm going to bounce. Versus if you have a dedicated landing page per campaign, which talks about the problem, whatever problems you're focusing on the campaign, whatever keywords you're focusing on the campaign side, you match that to the solution and how your product solves for that on the landing page side. That helps you connect the dots for them. You'll get much, much better conversion data, much better results. And also understand what context they're browsing in, what time of day, and consider, and we wrote about this on our newsletter, consider the attention and trust framework. Your job as a marketer is to get attention and build trust. And I think that's what it comes down to, is like, you have to get their attention by strong creatives and you have to build trust by strong copy and offers on the landing page. Again, there's lots of nuance to this, but this is just something that we have observed on and on. And I can't see the other screen, so if you have questions, just let me know. We'll figure something out. Over-investing in branded search, this might be a bit of a controversial one, but we don't believe branded search brings in incremental customers. And then there's also a discussion around, does advertising actually bring incremental customers? But a lot of times we've seen ad accounts running AdWords or B2B brands in spending as much as 70% of their branded search. But would have those customers naturally converted via your organic Google search queries or something? If you're looking to investigate how much you should be spending on branded search, this is something I read on John Short's blog from Compound Growth Marketing. He talks about check Google Console for the CTR and the branded queries. If it's high, then cut down on the branded search spend, because people are already organically searching for your brand. They're organically landing on your site, so you might not even need branded search as much. But if your branded search queries have a low CTR, then you might want to invest in branded search. But Also, it might be an SEO problem because you should be ranking for branded search terms. Again, when on our side, on our agency side, when we do reporting, we always break out the branded search piece, because to us, it's not incremental customers that's bringing in. It might be bringing in somebody who's already ready to buy in and is already on the edge to buy your solution. They're just looking you up, and then branded search takes credit for it, but it naturally shouldn't. I'm going to go a bit into attribution a little bit later on. This is an interesting one because this goes into this whole debate about demand gen, demand creation, yada yada. I don't believe in that as much. I think we don't create demand. It's just like your certain audiences are out of market and certain people are in market. So the in market portion of your audience is approximately 10%. I hear some beeps, so I'm going to check the other window. Oh, let me turn this off. The branded. So not everybody in your target audience, target market is going to be looking to buy right now in the next 30, 60, 90 days. So how do you, and when we run direct response ads, such as like Google search or, whatever, we're only targeting that 10% of the market that is actively in the buying cycle. And that also means that the people who are active in the buying cycle, you plus 20 other competitors are trying to reach that same tiny 10% of the segment, which drives up auction prices. The magic of brand marketing or whatever you want to call it is understanding that there's 90% of the market is not ready to buy right now. How do you build brand affinity? How do you build brand mental availability in that 90% of the segment, that when they are actually in market to buy a solution, they have an affinity for yours versus your competitors? And that's where I think brand marketing comes in, is that you're trying to build an affinity, gain trust with the audience that is actively not in market, but they will be in the next 6 months. And then you want them to buy your solution, and that's how you cut down your cost per acquisition cost. Because if you only focus on the 10% of the market that's actively in market right now, it's you and it's like shooting fish in a barrel. Like you and 10 other people are trying to reach the same audiences with the same keywords, with the same kind of messaging. And you're like, hey, buy my solution. And that is where your CAC can get really expensive, because everybody else, like Monday.com, might be spending like a gazillion dollars on paid media, and they might be outbidding you on every single keyword. So your job is to understand what is that 90% of the market who are not buying right now. How do I get in front of them? How do I make sure that when they do come in market, they prefer my solution? And that's how you can bring your cost per acquisition down as well. Because instead of focusing on that tiny segment of the market, you're looking at I'm not saying you shouldn't focus on the tiny segment of the market, because you have to focus on that, but also understanding that you need to balance that 90% of the market that is out in market. Now, this is what I believe a lot of people, when they talk about demand creation or whatever, that's what it is. I don't think this is inherently new. This is like an old concept. I'm sure like most of you know about it, but this is essentially what it comes down to. Now, I know I already said 5 and I have a couple of bonus ones, so bear with me. Attribution is interesting because you can go on one side of the argument and say that, oh, you're measuring too much and some things can't be measured. But it's also as short-sighted to say we shouldn't measure anything, or because it can't be directly measured, there's no way to measure it. So instead of looking at first click, last click, or whatever have you, we've started to do more of marketing mix modeling, which takes the data of your entire 6 months of data, 1 month of data. The more data, the better. And then you build data models that sort of predict what is the contribution and correlation of X tactic, X channel, X campaign to actual revenue and MQLs, SQLs, trial channels, whatever. This builds you a more holistic model, and this is also not completely lost touch, blah, blah, blah. With this kind of models, you can measure things like podcasts, you can measure things like brand spend, you can measure things that are not just direct click related, but you can understand how you might be spending on Facebook ads on the front end of the house, and then they might be converting off paid search. So you can understand what is actually Facebook's contribution to that, excluding paid search taking credit for it, because you're measuring it on a last click. So this kind of model sort of works around that. And this, again, is not new. This is, I learned it from, I'll share some blogs, but this, Michael Taylor, he writes a lot about this. This is where it comes from, is you understand what is my ceiling per channel, you understand what is my correlation per channel. And if you look at the graphs, basically, the closer the dots are to the line, the more likely the line explains most of the dots. So the model explains a lot of the data that you see. Again, like I know I'm jumping into this. If you want to know more, happy to talk about it offline. But sort of moving away from this discussion of let's not measure everything, let's not measure anything, to let's measure everything. I think the sweet spot is like understanding we have to measure some stuff, because what does not get measured does not get improved, but also understanding the shortcomings of your traditional, whatever measurement model you have, and understanding that it's all going to be perfect, but you're looking for more directional attribution. Now, also on attribution, a lot of people use it to justify themselves, whereas attribution should be used to understand what's working, what's not working. So it's not about marketing justifying their existence to sales and saying, oh, look at this marketing attribution, we're bringing in so many deals, to understanding what the customer journey looks like. Again, one more bonus. It's a mix, not a channel. So we like to believe there's like a silver bullet. There's like one thing that's bringing in 80% of revenue, but in actuality, what we've seen, it's a cumulative effect of everything you're doing, going together. For example, like paid media by itself is not, it's only going to take you so far. If you have strong organic, good product, good brand, and paid media on top, then that can be accelerated. I love this framework by Emily Kramer from MKT1, who talks about the engine versus fuel analogy. Like you have the engine, which is your positioning, your content, your product, your messaging, your product marketing pieces, how you fit into the market. And then your fuel is your paid media, your distribution, your SEO, all that stuff that helps you accelerate. But you need that foundation. So all those different touch points sort of reinforce each other. All the product stuff reinforces your marketing. If you have a good product, it's easier to market for it because people love that product. But if you have a shitty product, it's very hard to market. And a lot of people we see treat paid media, SEO, all these things in individual siloed channels, but the effect is there's cross-pollination effect, and like all these things work together. So if you have a podcast, the podcast itself probably on its own doesn't do anything, but the podcast repurpose on social, leveraging paid, leveraging communities, all that stuff cumulatively has a bigger effect than that single tactic itself. And I know I promised I'd talk about RevOps. I have a lot to say about RevOps, but I think the biggest problem is that they don't build systems for scale, and they focus they either underinvest in technology or they overinvest in technology. So we've seen a lot of people who will go out on a shopping spree, buy tens of different tools, but they don't integrate, thus creating data silos. And the way we look at it is, it has to be people come first, then the process, and then the technology. So the technology has to automate the process. The technology shouldn't come before you have a process mapped out. And RevOps is a central function that should support all go-to-market teams, but oftentimes, sadly, it's seen as audit takers who are just like, hey, VP sales says add this field to Salesforce, and they don't really bring them into those strategic discussions. And this is the end. I have one more super bonus slide, is like over-indexing one channel. There's no demand creation, use the jobs to be done framework. I'm investing under brand, but not measuring it, because a lot of companies will invest in brand, but they'll keep it outside of their measurement framework. And brand is just measured over a longer period of time. Over-indexing on direct response, because you have SQL goals to meet. But the fact is that if you want to meet MQL targets or SQL targets or revenue target for this quarter, that work should have started like 3 months ago, because that is what translates into like people hitting revenue targets this month. So you have to like build that buffer of time. And then this is a controversial one, but I just think like performance marketing on itself can also build brand affinity just by virtue of repetition and exposure. And that is all I had. Thank you for listening to me yammer. Oh, I am not sharing my screen. Well, that was fun.
We lost a couple of last slides, but I think it's okay. We heard you speaking, and we're gonna share your slide with the group. So
okay.
Oh well. Okay. So, and whoever wants to clarify any points that Kamil made, please post it in the questions tab right now. So, starting with one question is balancing brand awareness, market awareness. You're targeting the 90% who are not in market today, versus the bottom of the funnel ads, like to schedule a demo ads. Like, how do you think about balancing those?
So in terms of, we look at it as you should be doing 30% on the out of market audiences and 60% 60% on the in-market audiences, because the fact is, like, you have to meet this quarter's revenue target, so you will heavily index on that. But it's a mistake to completely just 100% focus on direct response and not at all. So we like to spread by 30% on the brand side, and then the rest on the direct response side. Could vary, like depends on the market, depends on the product, depends on the who you're selling to. If it's yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Ian is asking here, how do you prove to clients that branded search campaigns don't bring in incremental sales?
So we look at it two ways. We look at it in terms of like your Google Search Console, how many branded queries are actually resulting in that. And then there's been studies on this. The famous one is the eBay study, where they cut branded spend on eBay's branded terms, and they actually had no effect on the bottom line revenue or sales at all. And then we've done these experiments ourselves where we're like, okay, we are spending, I don't know, 100K on branded search every month. What if we take that to zero? Does that have an impact? And 90% of the time, it doesn't have an impact. The branded search, again, there's a case for branded search as a defense strategy. If you have competitors, if you're Salesforce and like everybody's bidding on Salesforce because you're the gorilla in the room, then you have to have some branded search to like defend against competitors. But the strategy for a defensive branded search is very different than a strategy for acquisition for branded search. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely. And also there's a question here. I'm actually not sure if it was for you, but maybe you have a take on it. How would you explain the value of brand building in demand generation to executives? Do you have a take on brand building in demand gen?
I do. And I think ultimately a good brand building exercise will lower your CAC and acquisition costs and make demand gen a lot easier for you. So again, it goes back to that in-market, out-of-market audiences. When those people come in market, your cost per acquisition will be much lower because they'll have a natural affinity for your product, versus if you don't spend any time on brand building, and then your cost per acquisition will be much higher because you and 10 other competitors are all competing for that 10% of the market that is actually in market right now. And it's going to the CAC will just go out of the roof. The other thing is you can do like recall surveys and all these other things. Like LinkedIn has rolled this out recently where they do brand recall surveys and like all that stuff. So you can like say, hey, look, people are more likely to buy our product because of XYZ.
Fantastic. Awesome. Looks like we're all out of questions. So Kamil, thank you so much for coming to the show and sharing your wisdom.
Yeah, appreciate it.